Good afternoon. Lovely afternoon here in County Meath. And this is about nature and birds, the birds that are about here in County Meath and where I live. Um, if you live in a city, a big city, where perhaps you're in an apartment block, and you probably won't hear birds too much, except maybe depending on where you're living, seagulls and crows and things like that. But you won't hear the blackbird too much unless you're living in the suburbs and have a garden, and perhaps there's not too many cats about, because in the suburbs there are far too many cats and other predators. So you do hear though the blackbird and all singing on wires. But in cities like London, for example, you won't hear too much of that in all the apartment blocks and in all the where people live. And But then they have perhaps birds in cages, these little canaries that are suited for that environment. So they have some little bit of nature. But where I live, I have nature in its abundance. In my garden that I have, which is there are trees in it and hedges on both sides, and there are birds, robins, blackbirds, thrushes, um, little chaffinches, and an assortment of other ones that I'm not too familiar with. But of course, there's the usual crow and there's the usual crow and all these other kind of birds. Um, so, but what I do now when I'm living here, I I have porridge in the morning. I don't have it when I'm away. I was away with my sister for my birthday there last week and left there on Wednesday. I was glad to be back here in my own little nest. And I have porridge, and I make sufficient, and I have some over that I put out for the birds. I have robins on one side, and then I have a robin on the other side, and other types of birds. So I put out when I have my own, have some in the pot. So I have a spoon, and I put some outside the door, and I put some over the other side on the left hand side. Then I go around the corner for the other ones because they don't mix, unfortunately. And I put enough there and along the way, so that the different birds, robins and sparrows and other types of little birds. And then I put a bit on the windowsill and in at the kitchen there for these little chaffinches. They like that, and I put that there for them. Uh, so as they get they can treat themselves, and to see them there from time to time. So this is what I do. So I have all these birds, and then the blackbirds are sometimes have a touch with it, especially when towards the in the cold weather that we had there. We say in the winter, and they're all sort of waiting at the door and for me near enough, and sometimes hopping on the windowsill, sort of saying, "Hurry up about that." This is what I do, and then in the garden, say you've the blackbirds and thrushes and that, and they're feeding on the grass. And then they're what they do with their beaks. So all this nature is marvelous, and they're whistling and singing. This is what in Ireland. This is the great gift that we have with nature in all its abundance. And of course, I never use poison of any kind for anything, so that they can eat what they're eating in comfort. This is why I think I have a good amount of these birds about, because it's safe for them. If you put down any kind of poison, this Roundup or that, somebody told me that banned or something, but suffice to say that people use far too much of it, and it's not good for nature. I noticed one thing that there's a scarcity of is bees. Did you notice that? Yeah, you can get honey in the shops in jars and so on and so forth. And I often wonder, is it natural honey or is it artificial? Something I don't know. But one little bird that I found fascinating in some ways, and I think it was about maybe 2 weeks ago from now, I saw my first swallows. They arrived from Africa. And the funny thing is, they come back to where they were born or wherever it is in different parts of the country, and there's a fair share of them here that come and they're flying about. I noticed them there a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and they're busy little beavers. They're flying around and they nest in barns and places like that. When we lived in Howth, there was sand martins. There was like swallows, but they nested in sandbanks, which was there at the time, but of course they are gone. There's houses there now. Funny enough, they built houses anywhere, too many at times. Dublin, compared to what it was when I was young, was a lot of country. Now it's full of houses, and yet there's people are homeless because in this country we don't have the sort of safety for people that's renting, as they have in France and other countries, where rents are controlled and they have to get a person renting an apartment or that gets a 25-year lease with 5-year rent reviews based on the cost of living as is, not on some some expensive rent that they have in this country and in Britain, but in the rest of Europe, no, they don't have it. And that's why they don't have a housing problem, where the prices are far too high for renting and there's no security. They can charge astronomical prices, not related to their income. And this is wrong. They're talking about trying to build social housing. Now, it's very hard to understand the business of social housing. People live in houses, and people that have not a great income often can't afford to buy a house with the price of them. In this country, you can buy stuff in France and these countries at far less, even in cities. I notice it myself because I visit that country quite a bit. And that's one of the things I observe. And the same way in Germany and the same way in Italy. They don't have the housing crisis that we have here because of this winner takes all, this sort of this way. It's the one that have been in the EU that don't copy what goes on in the continent. And that's strange. Britain is not in the EU, and we've copied Britain because they have this. They don't have security of tenure for people that rent. They can pay astronomical rents, and supply and demand comes into the picture. But I think it's not right. And now Butcher Funds are building apartment blocks in Dublin, and it won't be for sale, it'll be for rent at astronomical prices. So there's something wrong. There'll be a collapse one of the days, and rightly so. But I think they'd want to copy what they do on the continent and stop and give people security of tenure, and we mightn't have this homelessness that we have. You'll often have people, God help them, that have psychological problems, but they should be helped and often sleeping rough on the streets in this country and in other countries. And in the United States, apparently there's far too many, even in Manhattan. Anyways, I was talking about nature. This is the way I digress. We'll keep on the positive side. So this is what I hear in the morning and that. And they're kind of a bit quiet just lately. I think they're busy building their nests and rearing their young. We can learn a great lot from the nature, and we're blessed in this country with such a variety of birds. You've got the crows, and they have their own distinctive voice. When we lived in Boyle County, Roscommon, there was crows near where we lived in the Barrack Square. And funny enough, we associated summer with all the crows, what they were at in the trees just across the road from where we lived. They hadn't been developed. The people that owned those houses and land didn't go down the the road to try and maximise their potential. Because you need to sort of not be always seeking to get wealthy. Just do good for the environment, for yourself, and for nature. And look after nature, and nature look after you. This is why it's lovely living in the country. I'm living in the country, but near a town, beside it, 5 minutes walk. So you've all these gifts, and I can go outside the door and have a walk. So anyway, that's about birds and nature. And I digressed, of course, as usual. This is one of the things that we do when we get on in years, isn't it? As we have so much experience. Have a good afternoon. I'll probably do another video for the day is out, now that I'm at home, and I can do it without music that I don't want, as that happened in Rosslare Strand. But I was able to do the prayer video every morning, no matter what. But it was hard going, and then I could send emails because there's an article now being printed in the going to be with a great friend, Darren. It's going to be printed in the North Side and the South Side News, which has a readership apparently of about 120,000. And he's a journalist, and he interviews various important people, and he interviewed yours truly. Well, he did that before, but anyways, and the article that he produced it'll be in the North Side News and the South Side News on Friday, I think it comes out. So I hope I get a couple of copies of that and see what way, where it is, and what way it's treated. Isn't that right? Have a good afternoon. You'll hear from yours truly before the day is out. I have to do a bit of work. I have to cut the grass, and I'll have a little bit of a walk now after this. Seeing how's a good day. I'll be able to say a few prayers, perhaps the rosary. I generally do that. Cheerio. Say your prayers, and thank your lucky stars that if you're living in Ireland, that you're, the great gifts that we have here. Bye now.